begin with the pledge?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
You have the minutes of the June 4th, 2024 meeting in front of you in the packet. They're also online. Are there any additions or corrections? Is there a motion to approve the minutes?
Motion approved.
Motion by Mr. Topel, second. Let's go ahead and start with introductions. I'll introduce myself. I'm Kevin Breitsky, Porter County Surveyor and leader of this group today.
Tom Vanderwood, NERC staff.
Fleur Baum, NERC staff.
Kay Nelson, Northwest Indiana Forum.
Ryan Lissig, Dry Clean, Indiana.
Lisa Schrader, NDOT Report District.
George Powell, Union Township Trustee in Porter County.
Dean Button, City Engineer for Hammond.
Brian Snedeker, EFNS.
Charles Bradsky, NERC staff.
Terry Martin, Carrier Gable.
Scott Leverett, Coordinating Member.
Scott Pruitt, First Group Engineering.
Alex Lusker, BFNS.
Susan Hughes, NERC staff.
Grace Bettinger, NERC.
Meredith.
Stillwell, NERC staff.
Thank you, Meredith. Thank you all for being here. Do we have any public comment today on any of the items? We see none. Is there anybody here to make public comment? Seeing no one, we'll proceed with our agenda. Planning first. We have a cooperative agreement for coordination of land use, transportation planning in Chicago, Gary, Lake County, Illinois, Indiana, urbanized area. Tom Van
So welcome to the today's meeting. I don't have a presentation at all, but in your packet on page 3 and following, there's a memo along with the subject agreement. We're required by federal regulations to establish formal agreements with other MPOs, metropolitan planning organizations, with whom we share urban areas. So in Northwest Indiana, we share 2 urban areas, the Chicago, Illinois, Indiana urban area. We share that with the Chicago Metropolitan Agency for Planning, our counterpart in Illinois. And we also share the Michigan City, LaPorte, Indiana, Michigan urban area with a portion of Southwest Michigan. And so we're required by the federal regulations to have agreements with both of those agencies in order to formalize the fact that we're kind of sharing responsibilities, planning responsibilities for those urban areas. So what I have here for you today is the agreement with Chicago Metropolitan Agency for Planning, also known as CMAP, NERC, as well as Indiana DOT and the Illinois DOT. This agreement, which begins on page 4, is kind of a very general, broad outline of how the 2 agencies will work together on planning and programming within that Chicago, Illinois, Indiana urban area. This is just an updated version of the document, which is already on file for NERC and CMAP. So it's just been updated with the latest census information. Those are the only changes to the agreement. So we would be asking this body to forward a recommendation to the full commission or executive board to execute this agreement.
Do you have any questions for Mr. Vanderwood? Sounds pretty straightforward. Do I have a motion to forward this?
Second.
With a favorable recommendation?
Or favorable recommendation.
Any other discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Sounds unanimous to me. We'll move on to planning 3.2. Stephen Hughes will be making a presentation on resolution 2408, adopting the transit asset management group plan for small providers.
Good morning.
Morning.
So, every 4 years, the FTA requires all transit operators or those who sponsor a group plan for transit operators to update their transit asset management plan. This is something that began in 2018. And then we actually made an update in 2020. So we're actually off cycle with the majority of transit operators, but they allow that. They're okay with that. They're comfortable with that. And the idea is to continue state of good repair for our transit vehicles. For our transit operators, we have 7 subrecipients, and NERC actually owns the vehicles. I think we all have probably heard that, but maybe it's just not fresh on our memories. So the TAM plan is the Transit Asset Management Plan, and that's our guiding document for how we prioritize replacement. It deals with the vehicles primarily, but also with technology and facilities. So if an operator is using computers or tablets or something like that as part of their dispatching mechanism, that can be rolled into this and prioritized that way. There are reporting forms for the vehicle condition and facility conditions. FTA requires that the facilities are reported on even if there's no federal investment in those facilities. Purpose of that is they want to make sure that our transit is being operated from a safe environment for even the office workers. And then the asset inventory is it's a part of the plan. It's not in your document because that is something that it's updated so often every time that we get the condition assessments from our transit operators, which is an annual thing, but also anytime that a vehicle is purchased or sold after its useful life. So that document exists, staff keeps it up to date. It's not in your packet because it changes frequently. Like I said, every 4 years, there's a required update. That update has to look at all aspects of the plan. So this is our 4-year update. We took the existing plan to our transit operators and we said, okay, what works, what doesn't work? Obviously, through the last 4 years, we had huge upsets in how the vehicle market is working. Prices are much higher than they were. Availability has been low to non-existent. So even though everybody's going, we really need some new vehicles, they said that the criteria used in the TAM plan were probably still adequate and appropriate for moving forward. So it'll take us a little bit of time probably to kind of catch up to where we should be, but the plan is going to reflect very much the same as it did in 2020 with that update. Because as we talked through with our subrecipients, they felt comfortable with kind of the methodology of prioritization. So looking at kind of what that methodology is, we prioritize first and foremost revenue vehicles, get priority over non-revenue vehicles. A non-revenue vehicle would be like the mechanic having a truck to be able to go out and meet a vehicle that just needs a quick tire change or something like that. That can be done kind of on the road. And then the next 2 categories they're sort of an either or. They're, in a very technical way, they are kind of, this moves from top to bottom, but if a vehicle has met its useful life in years, it moves on to the next criteria, which is the useful life in miles. If something's met its useful life in miles, though, it may also still be eligible for replacement. And then when we get to the bottom, if we've got a whole bunch of vehicles that are the same age within a few months, the same rough number of miles, we look at the condition assessment. As you might imagine, a demand response vehicle that is running longer trips from, say, Valparaiso to Pines and back, those miles are going to be different than running a fixed route like what Valpo does with the V-Line. So the miles and the condition of the vehicles are going to be different, and that's why we have all of these criteria as part of our condition assessment. The priorities, again, are the same as they were in the previous plan. And then, again, facilities, garages, pavement, fences, bus stops, those all have useful life as well, which basically means at some point the federal interest is kind of at its end point, and they say it's okay to either continue the use of this if it's in good shape or to replace it. And obviously the goal is always not to replace things before they've met a useful life. Obviously natural disasters and fires notwithstanding, sometimes those things do have to be replaced prior to that. So if you have any questions, I'm happy to address those, but we are asking for a favorable recommendation on the resolution.
Let the record show that David Wright's here, and do we have any comments from any of the sub-recipients that might be here?
Stephen, you said there were 7 sub-recipients?
Yes.
Can you run through those 7 quickly for those of us who aren't in the know?
Yes. City of LaPorte, their transport, is the name of theirs. Valparaiso is the V-Line. Porter County HEB Community Services. Opportunity Enterprises. North Township Dial-A-Ride. City of East Chicago. And Lake County Community Services.
Thank you.
We typically have them all in shorthand, so it's like, what's the full name of that?
No judgment from my perspective on acronyms and what the words mean.
Could you have a list for the commission to
Yeah.
relate to that? Question. Are there any other questions, comments? Hearing none?
Just one comment, as far as the next steps with this particular plan, this is a document that after adoption, NERC just kind of maintains and uses. We don't submit it to the FTA for approval or anything like that. But we are required to have it on hand to implement it. And every so often when we undergo a certification review, the federal agencies will verify that we're in fact using it.
Are the shuttle companies required to submit it for National Transit Database? I know we have to upload ours.
Right.
Just make sure it's current.
We do. NERC uploads that.
Okay.
I don't believe the subject.
I don't recall, because since we're the ones that
So you upload it to NTD?
we upload it to NTD, and we upload it when grants are written
Okay.
to as a demonstration that yes, this is consistent with the plan.
I move for approval of
Or a recommendation for approval?
recommendation.
Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Thank you so much. Any other comments, questions? Not? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Anybody against? It's unanimous.
Thank you.
We'll move on to programming with Charles Bradsky.
Good morning, everybody.
Morning.
On page 24, There's a public comment report. Just to kick off the amendment, 24-02 and 24-02.5 to the 2024-2028 TIP, or Transportation Improvement Program. We break up the amendments into transit and infrastructure, because what we found is we send stuff down to Indianapolis to put into the STIP, and if it's a transit project, it gets lost. And so, because the people down that it usually goes through are looking at infrastructure projects, and it's one of those things that he'll look at it. So that's why we have two different amendments here, 24-02 and 24-02.5. There was one comment that was requested. There was a request from someone in Cherville for the list of projects that were in the amendment, or in these amendments, and I supplied that person with the projects that were in Cherville. No other comments have been received as of yet. The public comment period does go through, began on July 19th and does end on August 9th. So we still have some time if anybody wants to make a comment or review the amendments. I did send the amendment to the interagency consultation group on July 18th and did not receive any comments. According to the air quality conformity consultation guidance, if no responses are received within 7 days, then that is perceived as a concurrence. So, moving on to the amendment itself, which is 4.2. On page 25 is a memorandum, which just gives you a succinct description of what's going on with all the projects in both amendments. There's 72 projects in this amendment. Hopefully after 22, or this amendment, it should start settling down. With our TIP being kind of frozen for a millennium, it seems. Things were really starting to back up, and this should clear up all that clear that back up. If you want, I'll go through these. So INDOT has 52 projects. 10 of them were pavement or road rehabilitation. One was a project deletion of that 10, I should say. One was project deletion, 7 were adding significant amount of funds. One was carryover from previous TIP, and one was a new project. There were several projects that somehow did not get carried over with the TIP adoption. And so the first two amendments were kind of clearing that up. Continuing for INDOT, there were 11 intersection modifications. 2 of them were carryover from the previous TIP, and 9 were adding a significant amount of funds. There were 2 pedestrian enhancements. Both of those added a significant amount of funds. 23 bridge projects. 19 of those were bridge rehabs. Of that 19, the breakdown is 4 were carryover, 14 were adding a significant amount of funds, and 1 was adding a new phase. 3 of those were new bridges. Again, 2 of the 3 were carryover, and 1 was adding a significant amount of funds. Then there was 1 bridge removal, and that was adding a significant amount of funds. There were 2 ITS projects. One's a new project, and one is a adding a significant amount of funds. The ITS project, I believe, are associated with the 8094 Flex Road. There were 4 other type projects. 3 of them were new and 1 was a carryover from the previous. For the local sponsored projects, 20 of them were from East Chicago, Griffith, Highland, LaPorte, Maryville, Michigan City, Schererville, Winfield, and the counties of LaPorte, Porter County, and then 1 for River City. The breakdown is 2 intersection improvements, adding a significant amount of funds. 1 pavement rehab, adding a significant amount of funds also. 7 bicycle and pedestrian enhancements. And of that 7, 2 of them were adding a significant amount of funds. 4 of them were a carryover, and 1 was a brand new project that did not make it into the TIP adoption. There were 5 bridge projects, 2 bridge replacements. These were new projects. And then 3 bridge inspections. These were new projects or carryover from previous TIP. There were 4 road expansions, 3 carryover from previous TIP, and 1 was adding a significant amount of funds. And then 1 other type project, and that's carryover from the previous TIP. Looking at the transit amendment 24-02.5, there were 3 transit projects for NICD, which is the South Shore Line, and Michigan City Transit, all of which were adding a significant amount of funds. Like I said, hopefully this will clear up the backlog and get our TIP back to, I believe, it should be operating back at a normal cycle. Our next amendment will be in December. So, are there any questions?
Charles, is
Yes.
the plan moving forward that the .5s will always be transit?
The .5s are always going to be transit. The way I have it set up is 1 through 12 or 13, because we'll do what Baker doesn't, are always going to be amendments. And then 15 on would be administrative modifications. So, and they will always be broken up. Transit will always have their own administrative modifications. Like I said, I found that when I would send things to Indianapolis, to INDOT central office to be put into the STIP, if it was a transit project, it just kind of got lost. So we break those up and put those on their own, so that when they get to Indianapolis, the whole thing can, that whole amendment or modification can go to the proper place.
Are the other MPOs doing transit as .5 or?
Everybody has their own process.
Okay.
So I don't know. This way is easiest for,
Well, it helps us keep track.
yes, right.
We'll see. Hopefully they'll help.
We're counting on it. Thank you.
Any other questions?
Move to make a favorable recommendation to the commission.
Yeah, first and a second. Any other questions, comments? If not, do I have, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Anyone against? So moved.
Thank you.
Okay, next we have Resolution 2410 endorsing the use of Group 1, Chicago, Illinois, Indiana urban area funding, and Group 2, Valparaiso Shorewood Forest urban area funding for projects in either urban area. Vanderbilt is presenting.
Thank you. Allow me a moment to get this. Does anyone know how to read this on the screen? Have a link to the PowerPoint show. Try to see the slide. Oh, there we go. Okay. Same button that you normally press. Okay, thank you. So I'm going to speak this morning about Resolution 24-10, which relates to the use of funding kind of between our urban areas, which I mentioned earlier, under the cooperative agreement item. So this actually originated with the T-ROC committee. And there was a discussion at that committee about how to use funding now that the Valparaiso-Shorewood urban area has been taken out of the Chicago urban area. And so they voted to recommend the continuous use, which I'll describe going in this presentation. And the suggestion was made at that meeting after the vote that decision should be brought before the commission. So that's why we put together this resolution. We're asking the TPC to review this, discuss as needed, but ultimately to make a recommendation to the full commission or executive board to adopt this approach. So as background, the Census Bureau designates urban areas based on population and housing data collected in the most recent decennial census. So after the 2020 census, a new urban area was developed. It's not very easy to see here, but basically what happened was, this is the 2010 census designated urban areas. As you can see, there are two: Chicago, Illinois, Indiana, and then Michigan City, LaPorte, Indiana urban area. This is what was designated in 2010, and that's been the case since the year 2000. But after the 2020 census, because they changed the formula that they used to designate these urban areas, a portion of that Chicago urban area was removed and designated on its own as the Valparaiso-Shorewood Forest, Indiana urban area, which you can see on the map here in purple. And just to show you what it looked like before and after, here are the two sets of urban areas side by side. On the left is the 2010, and then on the right is 2020, and you can see that Valparaiso-Shorewood Forest urban area is basically encompassing a portion of that Chicago urban area. The limits of the overall kind of collective urban areas are basically the same, but that portion was taken out. So after the U.S. Census Bureau designates those urban areas, the Federal Highway Administration and the FTA use those designations to determine how to distribute planning funding and traffic and transportation funding. So they also are used to determine where MPOs are required. So any place where you have what's shown here as a Group 2 small urban area, an MPO is required to conduct the planning and programming processes for the federal funding there. So in our case, when the Valparaiso-Shorewood urban area was created and designated, it was already within our MPO. So it will continue to be a part of our MPO. It would have been possible for them to separate themselves into a separate MPO, but it would have been not advantageous for them to do so because they would lose all the resources that NERC provides, and they would receive a very small amount of planning funding to do that. So, so in addition to designating MPOs, the population of those urban areas is used to determine how much transportation funding each MPO receives. So I think it's clear, I want to be clear, it's not how much funding the individual urban area receives, it's how much funding the MPO receives. So if you're exceeding 200,000 population In Indiana, we call that a Group 1, and they receive, they're called large urban area, they receive what's called Group 1 funds. If you're a smaller urban area, between 50 and 200,000 in population, you're considered Group 2 by Indiana, and so you receive Group 2 funding. Group 3 and Group 4 are both funding is administered through the state Department of Transportation. So there is no MPO function for those funding sources. So once that funding is distributed, the MPOs then select the projects within their metropolitan planning areas. So you have the urban area, and then each urban area must be within an MPA. Our MPA is defined in our, our region is defined in the Indiana state statute as Lake Port and the Port counties. So our MPO covers that area. Our MPA is coterminous with our region at this point. So it's all of Lake County, all of Porter County, and all of Port County. But that's a choice that we've made. We've drawn that boundary. But we can draw the boundary pretty much anywhere we want, but as it says in this bullet here, at a minimum it must incorporate all the urban areas and the adjacent areas expected to become urbanized within 20 years. So we've opted in the past to just draw that coterminous with county lines. But the key bullet point here is the last one, which is that federal funds received by the MPO may be awarded to projects anywhere within the MPA. So although we have the Group 1 funding that comes through the Chicago, Illinois, Indiana urban area, and the Group 2 funding that we received for the Michigan City, LaPorte urban area, and then now Group 2 funding that we received for Valpo, Shorewood urban area, those funds may be awarded to projects anywhere within Lake Porter and Port County. It's going to be a little hard to see, but this kind of shows, this is just an excerpt from the table that we received from INDOT that shows how this funding is coming to NERC. So you'll see there's the Chicago Group 1 funding. You probably can't read that, but each line in blue is just a funding category. So it's STBG, CMAQ, HSIP, TA, Section 164, HSIP, carbon reduction, protect, and then the totals on the end. So the Group 1 funding that we're receiving, this is based on 2024, was about $25 million. Valparaiso was about $2.3 million, and Michigan City was $2.8. So those are the funds generated by the populations within those urban areas. And so historically, as I think we all know, we have kind of had a parallel process where we programmed the Group 1 funding separate from the Michigan City Port Group 2 funds. Now the recommendation that came from the TROC was, in the case of the Valparaiso Shorewood UZA, which is short for urbanized area, the recommendation was to allow the highway funding from the Chicago UZA and the Valpo UZA to be programmed interchangeably for projects in either one of those UZAs. So funding that is labeled Group 1 funds could be spent in the Valpo Shorewood urban area, and funding that is labeled Group 2 funds could be spent in the Chicago urban area. That's the recommendation. Now the reason for this, it's kind of described in a little more detail in the memo. I don't know if you had a chance to read it, but I'll just summarize it here. The first ground is that there are existing projects in the TIP, which are funded, which were selected for funding that are in the Valparaiso Shorewood urban area, but are receiving Group 1 funds. So you can see these are the existing Valparaiso projects in the TIP. What I've outlined here is that FY 2025, we have about $7 million programmed in that urban area. And then in 2028, we have another 9 million, 9 or 10 million. So we have these existing projects in the TIP which have already commenced, and in terms of design and earlier preliminary work. And so if we were to constrain projects in the Valpo urban area to merely using funding that came through that Valparaiso Group 2 pot, those projects would be underfunded and they would be potentially have to be canceled. And then the second reasoning, rationale would be when we have the ability to move funding, and Charles can speak to this in detail, move funding between urban areas, it gives us flexibility. So if there's a year when there are more projects in the Chicago urban area than there are funds available, we can move Valpo funding to that urban area and vice versa. You'll notice in this spreadsheet, we have projects in 2025 and 2028. There's nothing shown in 26 or 27. And the money has to be spent within the year that it's allocated. So if we were to not spend any Valpo money in 26, we would lose that money. And then the other kind of set of rationale for these is that they're, in contrast to the Michigan City urban area and the Chicago urban area, the Valparaiso Shorewood area is directly adjacent and was in fact a part of the Chicago urban area. So there are roads that kind of go in and out of these two urban areas. We don't have anything programmed currently that would traverse both of them, but it's a possibility. And so there's a geographic proximity and overlap that's not present in the other urban areas. And then secondly, it's 2024 currently. The next census will be conducted in 2030. And our TIP goes out, our next TIP will go out to 2030. So it's quite possible that because this is where population is moving, that these two urban areas will combine, will recombine in the 2030 census. And so therefore, if we were to separate them now, within even the next TIP, we could end up recombining them anyway. So those are the discussion points. What we're asking for is, just an endorsement, favorable recommendation to the commission to adopt a resolution which memorializes that approach. So if that were to pass, that would be something that we would then keep in mind and include as part of our upcoming NOFA. So we would be essentially conducting a single call for projects for both urban areas, and we would be, on the administrative level, moving the funding between them to ensure that they, we're making use of all of our funding that's available. That's my last slide. I will open it up for discussion or questions. And if there are specific questions related to existing program projects, then Charles can probably speak to those as well. I do want to point out, David, this is only related to highway funding because the FTA is much more strict in the use of funding. And so in order to spend money from in one urban area, moving from one to another, it actually requires an act of the governor. So that's a completely separate and distinct conversation.
So does anybody have any questions?
A few. The last slide that you had on the slide there, you talked about the possibility, or did I hear you correctly, that at the next census that Valpo Shorewood may recombine into the Chicago UZA again? That's sort of your projection?
So it's a bit of speculation, but the gap between those two urban areas is so small that, and that's where population has been historically moving, that we speculate that they could recombine at the 2030 census.
Okay. how much money was NERC getting in Group 1 funds prior to the 2024 fiscal year combined Group 1 funds? Because you're projecting now 27.3 million in 2024, combining Chicago and the Valparaiso Shorewood Universities. How much, are we getting the same amount of money?
That's a good question, Charles. I think
We,
basically the same.
we're, Group 1 funds remains relatively the same.
So the 27.3, they just carved off to an.
No, they gave us additional.
We got additional funding as a result of
Right.
this. Or perhaps as a result of just growth and the cost of doing business.
Correct. So looking at what we received in 2022, probably was somewhere right around 22 million. And then when this came about in 24 or even 23, we did receive additional funding for the Valparaiso Shoreline Forest.
Would that have been normal growth or would that have been? as a
I
result
don't
of
believe
creation?
that could be attributed solely to growth.
So there's a benefit in the NPO or NPA to have this new UCA because we got more money as a result of that.
Well, it's hard to know with precision where all the money came from and what was the cause of it. The overall urban area grew with population, the combined urban areas. So I think that's probably the reason why, we kind of, both pots grew. The Valparaiso added more than it would have taken away from the other one, if that makes sense. If it were combined, it wouldn't really change the overall math because it's based on the population.
Yep, yeah, that makes sense. And then the earlier question really was, you think it's going to recombine maybe in 10 years or so? There's never a plan to treat it like Michigan City or the Port Michigan City UCA is its own separate UCA. That's not the intent of this.
So I think
this NPO.
So I think the intent of this resolution would be to say, let's not set up a parallel programming process like for the Valparaiso UCA, like we have for Michigan City LaPorte. Let's continue to treat them as one, although the funding will be labeled differently in the TIP spreadsheet. We're not going to make a distinction as to which urban area receives which funding. It's just about however we can move the money around. If there's a project at Hammond that needs money, we can move the group 2 there for this to make it happen, or vice versa.
Otherwise, we would lose it if they were separated, because there's years when Valparaiso's not getting a project or not funding a project where the Chicago UCA would be funding.
Right. It's kind of a way almost of saving. I mean, it's in the spirit of sort of a cooperative and continuous planning and programming that we do, which is to say, Hammond needs the money this year, they receive a large portion of it. Next year they don't, so the money is here. But if we're keeping it in those separate pots, then we're not able to move it around as uniquely.
That's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Good questions. Anybody else? If not, do I have a motion to give a favorable recommendation to the commission?
So moved.
Any other discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Anybody against? That's unanimous. Thank you.
Tom.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Mr. Vanderwood for being here in the middle of his vacation. I really appreciate it.
Yes, no doubt.
This is a difficult topic. Let's move on to topical committee reports. Do we have anybody that wants to make a topical committee report at this time?
I don't believe so. I will just, maybe in this I can give just a brief update. We have, we're sort of still using, you may have noticed, we're still using the technical planning committee term, even though NERC has adopted a new committee structure. We are kind of projecting that we'll have the new committees really rolling into place in probably October. The reason for that is that some of the membership has changed from the old version committees to the new. And so we need to do some outreach to particular individuals and work through with the commissioners to identify which commissioners will be on these new committees. So for this meeting, we're still calling ourselves the TPC. Probably the next one as well, but like I said, I think in October, expect to see the Transportation Committee label being used on all the materials.
New committee, new name.
Are we
This will affect all of you, please.
blending all the committees into one giant committee that have transportation in there?
Yes.
So T-Rock will meet with TPC.
So there are two, so we're blending the 3PC, that was Howard, the Surface Transportation Committee, and the TPC, Technical Line Committee, into a single committee called Transportation Committee. T-Rock will still continue to meet as separately because they have kind of a very defined role. The transit operators roundtable will still continue because again, those two groups are kind of like working groups in a way that feed into
I know I often introduce myself as a professional meeting attender, but, you know, as oftentimes people can follow my line of questions, I don't understand the nuances of what all NERC is doing with transportation. So now you're going to assume I'm going to be able to follow the other two committees in conjunction with this committee, each committee meeting date. So we'll have a very long agenda each meeting, frequent meeting.
I don't think it'll be much longer than it currently is. There are a few items that are coming into, so a few things that are kind of like standing committee items from the Surface Transportation Committee will be now featured here. And those would be like reports on performance measures, both district performance measures and safety performance measures. A little bit more detail on some of the other kind of technical work that was being done by Scott. And the pedaling battle. At this point, they kind of existed solely for the purposes of distributing the funding for ped projects. And so that function will not be part of the TPC. It'll be part of either a working group going forward, because that is something that still feeds into the transportation committee. But in terms of, like some of the educational presentations and things that happen at some of those committees, that will just be done for the TPC. The transportation committee.
So then will the TPC become like a work group when it comes time to going through the projects as we have done in the past? Yeah.
I don't think there'll be a work group per se. For the current NOFA, which we're putting together now, we're going to retain the structure of those other committees in order to go through those different project categories that they have in the past. So all that will feed into the TPC, the transportation group. And so ultimately, it's not like everything's going to land on the shoulder of this group. But there will be probably some different things that will such as the, like I said, performance measures, educational presentations, updates on bike projects, and
just keep me posted where I'm supposed to be.
Absolutely.
I think we'll keep more working groups help out staff, so they're not overburdened, but at the same time, we're hoping that everything's going to be streamlined, more efficient, more meaningful for people in the area.
Well, in September, when people give us a little bit more detail as to how this is going to roll out, round out, get appointed to, get invited from. I mean, I understand, or I think I understand that, one of the outcomes of this reorganization is to encourage more commissioners to attend meetings, to see what's going on, which I think is a fantastic idea, if it's successful. So, do you have like a set number of commissioners you're hoping to have per committee?
Yeah, in fact, some of that information.
Maybe do that, show us in September how it looks instead of putting on the spot today.
Well, for this committee, for example, we have 5 commissioners.
Yeah, so, Kate, you might want to just check the minutes from the last meeting we talked about. I'm not sure, I don't know if you were at that one.
I wasn't.
We can still.
They did.
Okay, yeah, we did a more detailed presentation on that last meeting.
I
But
see
if you're
that.
looking for the actual list, it is documented. But I can get you that information for all of these.
Let's see, in October.
That's
right.
I am a Great Lakes Commission.
That's right. You have something? Yeah. Anybody else have questions? Since we have no other committee reports, let's go to Drive Plain, Indiana.
All right, good morning, everyone. Happy, beautiful Tuesday. I'm gonna try and not kill the technology here in the room and try to connect it, see if this works. Oh my gosh. Hallelujah. All right, so good morning once again. So the different funding updates that we have is the second round of the CFI grant is available and it is due on August 28th. There's over 1.3 billion available. However, that is split up into two tracks, 500 million for past applications and 800 million for new applications. NERC has resubmitted the roughly $15 million prior application that was highly recommended but not awarded for round one. IDEM and INDOT are partnering on an application with Drive Clean Indiana for a statewide application. The intake form was due on July 24th for a state plan. Applications are due to the state on August 20th. And with all that being said, we have a really good plan going forward with funding for clean infrastructure, and it's closing all the gaps in definitely Northwest Indiana. So a lot of good projects coming from that. And then we have the IDEM Community Recycling Grant. That's up to $100,000 with a 25% match for initiatives and projects that improve recycling collection efforts. Applications are due September 6th. There's going to be another round of diesel-wise off-road funding. It's going to be coming out sometime in September, October. 25% off new diesel, 45% off new electric equipment. The EPA Community Change Grants. This is a no-cost share or match required. Roughly $2.8 billion available. Applications are due November 21st. And this is designed with meaningful community, tribal, and other stakeholders' input. The investments that EPA makes through this program are intended to achieve the following goals: fund community-driven pollution and climate resiliency solutions, invest in strong cross-sectoral collaborations with partners working with and for communities, unlock access to more significant resources, deliver technical assistance and capacity building support, strengthen communities' decision-making power. And once again, that's due on November 21st, and there's a lot of talk about that between all the communities, but not we haven't figured out who's going to be the applicant. There's going to be a second round of the NDOT's National Electric Vehicle Infrastructure Funding, NEVI funding. Funding will be available to deploy publicly accessible fast charging stations. RFP should be available in the fall of 2024. This is an 80% cost share grant, which will fund up to 8% of the projects. Getting into project updates, we have the EPA Clean Ports Program. That was a $3 billion initiative that was applied for back in May. There was 2 projects submitted in Indiana, partnership with the Ports of Indiana and IDEM. Total request of $43 million. Award should be coming out in October. The final round of VW settlement funding came through, and we were very successful with, and a lot of great projects here in the region with GBTC, since they're in the room, 2 electric transit buses for their fleet, so that's a huge win. School City EV Chicago, UPS, Gary Airport, and City of Gary as well. So propane school buses for the schools, CNG garbage trucks for the City of Gary. Over $1.9 million was awarded to local NERC area fleets that we assist in applying for those grants. The 2024 EPA Clean Heavy Duty Vehicle Grant, that was due back in July. We did apply for 32 electric school buses within the state of Indiana. Should be updated in November and December. Where those awards stand: 2023 National DARE program. Drive Clean Indiana was a prime applicant, and it was awarded 4 projects through this to the tune of about $12.6 million, and a lot of projects related to the port and steel haulers in Northwest Indiana. The electric vehicle charger reliability and accessibility accelerator, also known as EV-RA, we worked on an application to apply for IDEM and INDOT for the state of Indiana. Roughly $780,000 was awarded for the state application. We have a call today to discussing the rollout of that project and improving those down charging stations across Indiana. Just some upcoming events. We have the Partners for Clean Air Day at the Gary South Shore Railcats. We have tickets available. It is on August 18th. This is a great opportunity to bring out a lot of your different friends and family and celebrate different initiatives. There will be multiple bikes given away. I think we're trying to do one every inning. Then we have the Clean Air Golf outing on September 10th at White Hawk Country Club. We will be having an EV workshop at NERC on October 3rd. And then November 19th and 20th, we have our annual conference, which has been changed to Renewable Energy and Advanced Clean Transportation, simply known as REACT Expo, at the Blue Chip Casino in Michigan City. So trying to get through those really fast. Any questions? Okay.
Anybody have any questions for?
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Brian. We have staff announcements. Mr. Bransky, could you lead it off? Road Safety Audits.
Yes, we're doing road safety audits for all of the applicants. We had 6 different applicants that submitted locations for that they requested road safety audits. That translated to 12 different projects. We've met virtually with 5 of those 6 applicants. We have 1 more to meet. I think we're going to meet with them next week sometime. And then following that, we are going to be doing site visits. So, and then, so there should wind up, everything should be winding up towards the end of October. They are going to fast track those projects that people want to submit for either NERC NOFA or NDOT's HSIP NOFA that they're putting in. That's $50 million that NDOT is offering, or the state is offering through NDOT. So that's those two different options for if anybody wants safety projects. I'd also like to point out, I know I missed the topical committees. T-Rock has been, we've moved it back a month. It was supposed to be on August 20th, but I am going to be out of town attending a memorial service, and I will not be able to be here. It's usually a pretty, August is usually a pretty light month anyway, although we do have the NOFA coming up. So I am looking to have information or the NOFA completed before I leave town. So that should be ready to go. We're looking sometime around September 10th to October 10th. It is not going to be a very large NOFA. We do have a lot of projects that, we do have a few projects that are transformational, that people have suggested or have requested that we get them out of the way, legacy projects. So looking at what we have available, it's mainly going to be HSIP and CMAQ projects. There's not a whole lot of STBG funds available, but I do need to discuss with those entities who have legacy projects on if they want to, how they want to continue with those. So again, the T-Rock meeting, which was scheduled for August 20th, is moved to September 20th. September 20th? It's a Tuesday. For some reason, I'm thinking the 18th. So
17th is a Tuesday.
So then
We had the 24th.
17th.
Would you put down 24th or
24th?
okay, then it's 24th.
24th?
Oh, yeah, 24th, because it's after the commission,
Yeah.
on the 20th.
Okay, so we did move it to September 24th. There will be, if anybody, a big portion of that one is going to be the NOFA. But if anybody has if any LPA wants to talk to staff about what would be a good project, and please do talk to staff if you have a project that you are thinking about submitting. We can give you some guidance, we can answer your questions on what you may have. The NOFA is going to be similar in the past, where we have it open, everything will need to be submitted by around October 10th, and then staff will take a few weeks to review and make sure everything has been submitted, and if not, we can reach out to you. We're not going to, in the past, we haven't thrown out projects because you were missing a page or missing a signature, so we're just going to reach out and make sure that you can submit all that stuff, and then we'll send them to the working group, the topical committee working groups. The topical committees that we've had in the past, STC, 3PC, the Surface Transportation Group, and the Ped Paddle Committee, as well as land use, those will remain as working groups to review the NOFA only. So the projects in the NOFA. So again, I think we've got, we did send out a notice about the T-Rock and date change, and that's the reason why. And I thank everybody for allowing me to do this. And if anybody didn't get anything, we'll definitely make sure that we send something else out again. So, okay, that's it.
Summary, September 24th. Tuesday.
Yes, September 24th is Tuesday. That's going to be the next T-Rock.
And then the next NOFA submissions are due between September 10th and then October 10th.
Correct.
Thank you. Any other questions for Joe? Do we have more staff reports?
I would like to just mention the Flex Road public meetings that are going to be occurring next week. One on Wednesday in Hammond, at the Hammond Sportsplex and Community Center, and on Thursday in Homewood, Illinois, at the Irwin Community Center. And just a reminder to those of you that are interested in keeping up on that, to check out the website. It's www.flexroad.com.
That'll be Flex Road, it'll be 5:30 to 7 o'clock Central Time, 6 p.m. will be the presentation at the Hammond Sportsplex and Community Center. That's Wednesday, August 14th. Then Thursday, August 15th, at Irwin Community Center, in Homewood, Illinois. They'll have a companion presentation, 5:30 to 7 Central Time, 6 p.m. for the presentation. So that'll be 120 Highland Avenue in Homewood, Illinois. Any other?
I know we've had a discussion about copies. Get some copies.
Sure.
Tom, thank you for hosting that. I don't see that today.
Yes, Jane.
I just would like to remind everybody, if you haven't been beaten over the head with it, that the legislative session is coming up very quickly. And we have interim study committees whose dates are finally starting to be posted. The Funding Indiana's Road for Stronger, Safer Tomorrow, or FIRST Task Force is meeting on August 27th at 1 Eastern. I don't know if these are going to be viewable, if they're going to be hybrid or not. I would expect that they will be. Many of you around this table, I'm sure, are already painfully aware that road funding is a big issue, and so they are contemplating looking at the funding formula. And so if you have points that you want to be provided to members of that committee, because Representatives Pressel and Soliday are members of that committee, and you let me know and I can pass it along, or others around the table here, but just FYI. And if there are topics of concern, the Northwest Indiana delegation members have politely asked the forum to send them regular updates during the course of time when we hear of people who have issues or concerns but haven't necessarily approached a legislator on a bill aspect. So you all have my email and my cell phone number. So please don't hesitate to reach out if you, your community, your organization, whatever, wants to have some input. Thank you.
Any other announcements?
Question. We could, other kind of might be able to this one, an update on the nonprofit transportation feasibility study. What's the next one?
Yes, so the final report was accepted last month. So that project is over. It does include an implementation component to it, which is kind of general, but it does include a list of next steps, timelines, and responsible parties. I believe we're going to have a presentation on that report for the next meeting of this group. So we'll have a little bit more detail on that, but the kind of immediate next step for that would be to reach back out to the groups that agreed to participate in the pilot project and convene them here with NERC as kind of a facilitator and kind of begin working through those implementation steps. NERC's role at this point is just going to be helping to facilitate, because a lot of work that each individual organization has to do kind of on their own. Legal work and administrative stuff. So that's kind of what we'll be doing. We're looking for some members of the group to really be kind of champions and push the ball forward.
Anybody on those groups seem to be interested in
Well, yeah, Boys and Girls Club, Northwest Indiana is really the group that has the most active representative. So I think they will probably be the strongest champion. But it's because it's a collective effort, everyone needs to agree to sort of pool their resources, and as you can imagine, there's all sorts of legal implications for letting other agencies use your equipment and having your clientele going on other services and things like that. So it's really going to be a very kind of detailed process that we'll have to get worked through to make it happen. But it sounds like what he goes close to be the broker, which is a specific role in the organization, which collects the requests and distributes them.
Any other staff announcements? I will announce that the Finance and Personnel Committee for NERC will be August 15th at 8 a.m. And then, same day, Executive Board meeting of NERC will be August 15th at 9 a.m. following the Finance and Personnel Committee. Anything else good for the cause? Not, do we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
All those in favor?